Ambassador to the United States, Vinay Mohan Kwatra, has spoken with U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, sharing New Delhi's perspective on energy security and the growing energy trade between the two countries. This came a day after Graham urged India to use its influence with Russia to help President Donald Trump end the war in Ukraine, calling it one of the most consequential steps to improve U.S.-India relations. His remarks coincided with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's announcement that he had a very good and detailed conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, during which they discussed developments in Ukraine, reviewed progress in the India-Russia strategic partnership, and reaffirmed their commitment to deepening bilateral ties. Modi also said he looks forward to hosting Putin in India later this year. The diplomatic engagement comes amid escalating trade tensions after President Trump imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports over New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. The new duty, effective in 21 days, will raise total tariffs to 50%, with Trump citing national security and foreign policy concerns. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. He's a former diplomat. Thank you, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, Senator Lindsey Graham's suggestion for India to use its influence with Russia to end the war in Ukraine. What does this reflect, and how feasible is it for India to leverage this influence?
So let's start from the time the Russia-Ukraine war started, the latest round of the war. Over 2 years back. Now, at that stage, the US imposed a lot of sanctions on Russia. They stopped Russia's capacity to trade in dollars, and they tried to choke the Russian supply of oil on the global markets. Now, since Russia was not allowed to trade in the SWIFT platform, which manages the international trade, Russia then announced that it would trade for its oil in rubles. And various countries then started trading with the Russian oil in rubles, including China and other countries, including India. Now, Indian efficiency in refining oil is very high. The cost of refining in India is lower than other countries. So a lot of the oil started flowing into India for addition of value for refining. And that oil then started flowing back to Europe and to USA in very significant amounts, to keep the energy prices somewhat under control. I've seen in US, for example, even our electricity bills have gone up very significantly since the time the Russia-Ukraine war started. Now, if the bills and the cost of electricity in the US and in Europe it has gone up even higher than what it has happened in the US. So it is pinching every household significantly. Now, if you want to control those costs for the future, if this is completely sort of put under tariffs and sanctions and additional tariffs of 25%, the cost will ultimately have to be borne by the consumers in the US and in Europe, even for things like electricity. That will make all-round costs go up, inflation will go up, and the economy will tank. Once the economy starts going down, the voters will turn against the Republicans, and it will become very difficult for the Republicans to win the required seats in the Congress, in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, where they hold currently very thin margins, very, very thin margins, to win and sort of continue their control in both these houses after November 2026. Now, that is going to be a very precarious situation for the Republicans. If the economy starts deteriorating, if the voters start going away from the Republicans in larger numbers, and if their votes start getting scuttled because of the costs of electricity and inflation, then and if they lose the elections for control of the Congress, both upper house and lower house, Senate and the House of Representatives, then the Democrats will gain control of both these houses, and the president becomes what is called a lame duck president for the remaining 2 years of his tenure, over 2 years. So that is a very, very difficult situation for them to be able to manage. So they will have to see how to control the economy. Now, India is a very significant player, a very important player, because the economy will not go down so fast if the trade with India continues, if India helps them in manufacturing, if US helps India in technology, if US helps India in capital intensive areas. So there is a lot of mutual synergy. There is a lot of mutual benefits to India-US relations, India-US trade. Now, if it continues in the same way, and then the Russia-Ukraine war also does not stop, for the US economy to recover or to stabilize will be almost impossible. So for them to have a good relationship with India is very imperative, and to work with India towards trying to influence Russia is very, very important, because Indian relationship with Russia is very strong, and it has been going on in a very stable fashion for many decades, and it will continue to be so. So for them, instead of trying to disrupt the India-Russia relations, they have to try to use India's leverage with Russia, India's influence with Russia,
Yes.
to see how India can help in trying to bring a reasonable and quick resolution of the Ukraine-Russia war, because that will benefit the economies of the Western world significantly. And if that does not happen, it will damage and harm the economies of the Western world even more.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, for joining us today and sharing that insight. Well, that's all.